Right now, activists are pushing Hollywood studios to make more movies that are about climate change. They want Hollywood to produce more climate change propaganda. And they've even gone to the length of creating a new screen test for this, an algorithm, an algorithm, if you will, that will test movies for how well they propagandize audiences with climate change.
We have talked about the brand new climate Bechdel test here on the show before, but now what they're saying is they're running all of these movies through this new algorithm and saying that very, very few, only 9.5% of the last 250 big movies have passed the climate Bechdel test. I like the idea of calling it the Gore test. The Al Gore test. The
algorithm.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
The algorithm. It is.
So I saw here that he listed a bunch of films from the last decade that passed the climate Bechdel test, and some of them actually surprised me. So they have Pacific Rim, Kingsman, The Secret Service, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Maze Runner, Fantastic Four. 2016 had none. Then they say Justice League, Happy Death Day, which is so weird. Like, it's a comedy slasher film.
Can somebody remind me what it was in the Justice League movie that referenced climate change?
And they passed the climate Bechdel test only for a singular mention of climate change, right?
That looks like what they're talking about here.
So all of these movies mentioned it at the very least. So they also had Venom, Aquaman, Midsommar, Marriage Story, Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw.
Okay, so that one really annoyed me. So the first time I saw the movie, I didn't remember it. I suppose that's the best thing you could say, right, is I don't remember that line.
If it's a blink and you miss it.
So what it was is like Idris Elba makes this, he's the bad guy in that movie, and he's Idris Elba. He's cool. He talks cool. He sounds cool, and he has to deliver this line about the problems of the world being due to climate change and capitalism. And I literally go, please, somebody pick up something heavy now and throw it, because I need to get back to the action before I just jump out of.
I mean, you can still pass the climate Bechdel test if you write a character who is an idiot for being a climate activist. If you're making it seem like it's a stupid issue to care about.
You could also say that, I guess it is fair to point out that in that movie, it's the bad guy who's using it as an impetus to do evil things.
Honestly, like, I think the climate Bechdel test should just be like the parameters for it should be two plants talking to each other about something other than humans for at least 5 minutes. That's what would be a climate Bechdel test.
Yes, it would be.
They need to show plants having conversations. So also they listed Pokemon Detective Pikachu. I have no idea why the climate would be mentioned in that. But anyway, Tenet, The Hunt, Don't Look Up, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Eternals, Godzilla vs. Kong, The Tomorrow War, Wrath of Man, and 2022 is the last year of recorded, Glass Onion, Jurassic World Dominion, that's easy to predict, and Triangle of Sadness.
So there is actually something to be said about the idea that nothing is more popular in Hollywood than dystopian movies and television, right? They love dystopian stories. And what better way to introduce your dystopian show for them than to say, hey, the world was ravaged by climate change, hence the reason we live in the world we live in now. So it actually makes perfect sense that they can just shoehorn it right in there. I'm actually surprised the number isn't higher.
Wait, okay, so this says only 6 of the 32 movies had 3 or more scenes in which climate change was mentioned. If it's more than one, I'm not watching the movie.
Yep.
Also, the winner with 6 scenes mentioning climate change was Happy Death Day. That's the one that comes out on top, is a comedy slasher film.
I'm happy that I didn't watch that movie.
That's just insane. And they said the founder of this NGO said, we turn to stories to find meaning, joy, beauty, and courage, and we desperately need to see our world reflected in the movies that we watch and love. For all of us, that world now includes the climate crisis.
No.
Like, what a hall monitor.
I do not need to see my world reflected in a movie. If anything, I would like to see a completely different world, one that resembles very little of the world I live in, reflected in movies and television. I'm currently currently watching the Spawn animated series, and very little of that is indicative of the world that I live in on a daily basis, and I find it extremely enjoyable. Scary and enjoyable. Shocking.
There's no, especially in like the fantasy genre or action genre, there's almost nothing about that reflects the real world or the world that we live in, and nor should it.
Yeah.
Or else it wouldn't be entertaining.
Also, Hobbs and Shaw exists in a world where physics don't exist anyways.
Right,
It's
like
Fast and the Furious movie. So you want me to believe what you say about climate change, but a car can pull an airplane out of the sky.
They're normalizing reckless driving, and it's actually really problematic.
Yeah, it is. It's the height of narcissism to say that everything has to be reflected back at you, and I'm getting very, very annoyed because it seems to be the go-to excuse to make movies less fun. Like in comic books, it goes this way. So when somebody writes a comic, which could be written about anything, there's no budgetary issues about what you're going to draw, right? You can draw anything. You can draw space. You can draw monsters. Then why don't they do that? Because they pitch it wants to be pitched as a Netflix.
Oh, someone in the chat pointed out that because Happy Death Day is basically a ripoff of Groundhog Day, then maybe someone would say the same line about climate change over and over in the movie. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, we got another 20 from Shane H. Wilder. He said the Happy Death Day mention of climate change was a stupid climate activist that everyone hated. The only reason the character kept coming up was because every time the lead died, she started the day over and ran into the person. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
See, notice something here? All the people mentioning climate change are the bad guys.
Right, like they're the nerd that you don't want to be around.
Look, the reason why people are annoyed with this in comics is because they keep writing stories that take place firmly in the real world because it's not meant to actually entertain you. It's meant to be a pitch for Netflix because it's cheaper to adapt something that takes place in the real world rather than something that takes place in outer space and costs a fortune to animate or design. I don't need the real world constantly shown back to me. I want to see the fantastical. And even if it is the real world, like my life is not that of a superhero, nor should it seem like that. You want to do that to escape the world you're living in, even if there's something else. If I go watch a show about doctors, I'm not a doctor. I don't need to live in the world where doctors live to get enjoyment out of that.
Yeah, it's just funny. These are the same people that talk about self-care. But like, if someone's form of making sure they don't go insane thinking about all of the problems in the world is going to see a movie for a couple of hours, that's like morally wrong in their worldview. Like, you have to be thinking about catastrophic
when there's a genocide going on in Gaza.
Right. Yeah, there's gonna be a genocide in Gaza Bechdel test next.
Oh, I wouldn't be entirely surprised about that. I'm very, very tired of all this stuff, and most of the time, and here's the thing, most of the time these lines end up being throwaway lines that are just put in there. And these have existed for ages. Like most television shows will have paid homage to these types of causes in passing in their shows once or twice. That's fine. To me, and I know this is more of a personal thing, it's the buzzword nature of it more than anything that bothers me. Like, you can talk about problems with the environment. Remember when we watched Aquaman 2 and they mentioned greenhouse gases, and it's literally like at the bottom of the ocean and they're talking about greenhouse gases, and I almost got up and walked out. I'm like, can you imagine hiring Nicole Kidman, the great Nicole Kidman, to deliver that line? Mm-hmm. That's insane.
Yeah, it was just so like dispassionately delivered as well.
Yeah, it's just this is all so boring.
It's
I think that activists just weren't bullied enough in school.
I think you're right.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.